You're listening to Packers Talk Network.
Packers Talk.
Welcome to the Packers Weekly Podcast, part of PackersTalk.com network. I'm your host, Miles Tuddick, joined by your co-host, Tim Hamilton. We are diehard Packers fans, just love talking about the Pack. We're not getting into all the national sports media nonsense and talking points. We're sticking with football, talking about the top topics around the Pack every week, breaking down games during the season. And of course, now sorting through all of the drama, the rumors, the dreams of the offseason. If y'all want to support the pod, please spike that like button for us. Most importantly, jump on over to YouTube, type in Packers Talk Network, and hit that subscribe button when you get to the channel. And we sincerely appreciate that. It helps us greatly. Doesn't cost you much, but a few clicks, and you're back here enjoying some good old-fashioned Packers talk. Here we are. We got some stuff going on here. We got a new defensive coordinator. Some thoughts and feelings about that. Maybe some reasons to panic, maybe some reasons not to panic. We'll mix it up, see what we got for you. A few other things going on right now. We're in full offseason mode. It is Shrine Bowl week, so I did get a little bit of on the ground coverage there. Not as much as I had hoped for because this giant snowstorm had other plans. That's fine. We will roll with the punches and move on. But there's certainly, I think, a lot going on there this week, regardless of the weather, with the players and the coaches and the scouts. I think the Packers are potentially having a productive week there. I did get to catch up with a few players, and we'll touch on that a little bit. But the talent there looks good. The Packers scouts look like they were rolling deep there, and I think it was a good week. I think it was a good week. The game will be tomorrow. You guys will have to tune in. I think it's on NFL Network, I believe, and should be good. Last year, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt had a phenomenal Shrine Bowl game, and look how he did for the Commanders this season. So you just never know who you're going to see there. They are starting to really compete with the Senior Bowl for college all-star bowl games and the talent that they're bringing to it. So it is interesting to watch, especially for you draft nerds out there. I am a draft nerd. Tim, I think you qualify as draft nerd as well. So yeah, it's that time of year for us. So let's take care of some business before we dive into all of these things we got to cover here this evening. Our show, once again, is sponsored by Wisconsin's own Ticket King. For over 30 years, Ticket King has been providing Packers tickets to Packers fans, as well as Bucks tickets, Brewers tickets, all them other tickets, Summerfest tickets, maybe some other tickets you guys can think of that I can't. You can find them on the web at theticketking.com or visit their locations in Green Bay and Milwaukee. And remember, always support your local businesses, Wisconsin and otherwise. Tim, good evening, sir. Are you staying warm up there? How you doing?
Good evening. No, I am not staying warm. The weather sucks here. Sucks where you're at down there in Texas.
Yeah, I got nothing on you. I got nothing on you, man. I think we're like in the single digits tonight, so whatever.
That's, same here. So, the weather stinks. It's not a good time. I'm not a happy camper. Too much shoveling snow and too many freezing cold days. Like I need springtime. I need draft season. So we're going to get there tonight. We're going to talk about that. But I guess got some big news to talk about. Wasn't expecting this so soon. Just a week ago, we were just talking about Jeff Hafley getting the Miami job, and 6 days later, they come to an agreement with Jonathan Gannon to be the new DC. So, very, very interesting hire and very quick hire.
Yes, quick. Which, there's the same thing with Hafley. We didn't hear anything about it till it happened. My knee-jerk reaction wasn't great, right? We all, I think, are familiar with the clips. If you're not, there's some clips floating around on social media where, look, we can all be painted in a less than flattering light with out-of-context clips from the lesser moments of our lives, right? I'm sure I could get caught picking my nose or something and it would look really bad, or something like that. So it's fine, right? Like, we can't judge a guy on a few clips, but it's still evidence of his personality nonetheless, hard to ignore, especially when personality is, maybe part of the problem, at least what us fans feel is part of the problem. Culture, personality, toughness, things like that. And the one that gets me, right? Like I saw the, whatever. I'll set that aside. The one that gets me is asking a room full of NFL athletes if they took the bus to work today. It's like, come on, man. Like you gotta, I don't know. Like if you're gonna dip your toe into the motivational waters, come with more than that, right? Like it's just not meeting people where they are. If we could just kind of put it maybe a little lightly, it doesn't. I don't know. Just doesn't strike me the same way as that clip of Anthony Campanelli talking about everybody speaks butt whoopings. Like that just charges you up, and then you're like, man, that's probably who that guy is all the time, and he might be.
Yeah. I mean,
token, that's probably not who Jonathan Gannon is all the time. But nonetheless, that was the one that got me. What is your knee-jerk reaction?
Well, I mean, in fairness, we're just seeing some small clips, and there have been people out there defending and saying, no, he's not like that. And I'm sure he's not going to win a press conference like Jeff Hafley. Everybody loves when Jeff Hafley talks in his press conferences, and that's great and all. I don't really care what Jonathan Gannon says. It's what he does on the field and what his players are going to do for him that matters. So I don't care about that.
Totally.
Like Bill Belichick was the worst press conference person there was, but he's got a lot of rings, so who cares? But I'm with you as far as initial reactions. I was very underwhelmed. It was not the guy I was hoping for. I didn't necessarily have like a number one guy, but there was, he would have been pretty far down the list of possible candidates. So, yeah, I wasn't real thrilled with the hire. At the same time, this isn't Joe Barry. Like, this isn't Joe Barry 2.0. Joe Barry had been a defensive coordinator in two different spots and never had a good defense. Never even had a mediocre defense. He just was a bad defensive coordinator. And from the time that he interviewed, I was against that hire. Didn't like it at all. Didn't know why they were even interviewing him. And it was a disaster. We don't have to rehash all that, but obviously Barry didn't work out. I don't think Gannon's on that level. I know everybody's pointing to what he did with the Cardinals, and I get that. There's context there. And they were a very talent-deficient defense for at least the first two seasons with the Cardinals. Like, he didn't have much to work with. They were rebuilding the defense. They wanted to get guys that fit what he wanted to do scheme-wise. So I think you gotta look at it a little deeper than just what the numbers say, what the statistics say. In Philly, he had one of the best defenses in the NFL, went to the Super Bowl. And I know everybody's making the argument, well, look at all the pass rushers. Okay, well, he left Philly, and the following year they had a very similar roster, and their defense was horrible to the point where they fired his replacement during that season. They fell off a cliff defensively after he left. So there's something to – he was a good coach. And listen, they need more defensive linemen in Green Bay to fit his scheme, but they needed more defensive linemen in Green Bay no matter who they hired as defensive coordinator, right? They needed more defensive tackles. They need more corners. Like, whoever they were bringing in, they needed that personnel anyway. So I don't think that's just because they hired Gannon, like, you need these key areas. Like, those are spots they needed anyway. I think he was doing a good job in Philly. And he had improved that defense first year, the second year, even like as the first year went on, they got better. And then they took a big jump his second year to the point where they were a Super Bowl defense. Yes, I know they gave up, they lost the Super Bowl in the second half. The Chiefs, found some weaknesses and has found some advantages and took advantage. But that's prime Chiefs. That's Patrick Mahomes and Kelsey, and like, it's tough to stop those guys, right?
They did it though.
They did, but I mean, like, all season they were a really good defense. The second half of the last game they weren't. Like, come on, like, it's hard to judge them on one half of football. I'd rather judge them on the bigger sample size, which they were a top 3 defense that season. They were really good. So, yeah, I don't love the hire, but I'm at least willing to listen. And I think things that he's shown is that he came up around different coaches. He came up under Zimmer. He learned under Eberflus, which I don't love. but he at least learned scheme. He went to the Eagles. They wanted him to play a certain way. Sirianni wanted him to kind of play too high, kind of like Fangio style, and he was able to do that. They go to the Cardinals. They don't have the personnel, so they were kind of trying a lot of different things. They were getting creative, and that was one of the things Matt LaFleur's talked about in the 2 times that they've played the Cardinals over the last 2 years. It's just like they're a unique defense. They don't show you a whole lot pre-snap. They hold their disguises, and then after the snap, they're spinning safeties out. They're rotating guys. Like, they're kind of hard to get beat on and figure out what they were doing. So they tried a lot of different stuff just because they didn't have the personnel. So what is he really going to be in Green Bay? It's kind of unknown. I think he's going to try to adapt it as much to what they have. And I think we're going to probably see too high, take away the explosives, similar to what Jeff Hafley did, similar to what they wanted Barry to do, because I think that's what Matt LaFleur ultimately wants to do. He wants to limit explosive plays. He wants to make teams have to go down the field and have 10-play drives and not make mistakes. And we can debate that if that's the right way to go about it or not. But I think that's what he wanted Hafley to do, and that's what Hafley's defenses were doing. And I think he's going to want a similar thing from Gannon as well, and with some, whatever wrinkles that Gannon wants to bring into it as well. So, I don't love the hire at all. I can see positives, and then I can see where LaFleur could be interested in what Gannon can bring to it. Also, the experience of being a head coach can help. You're not breaking in an unknown defensive coordinator. Like, he had interviewed position coaches who may turn out to be really good defensive coordinators, but you don't know. And this team's window to win is now. So do you want to break in one of those young guys? And if you go back to the last time he was interviewing defensive coordinators, some of those guys didn't have the experience. They became defensive coordinators. Didn't work out for all of them. They're now available again to be hired. So, I think that might play a factor. Like, maybe he wanted somebody that has an experience calling a defense and running a defense. Is it the right way to go? Only time will tell. Is he going to be better than Hafley or as good as Hafley? Who knows? We can all sit here and say, no, he's not. He's terrible, or why did they do it? But you don't know.
You just can't say that. Yeah, I mean, you can't sit here and say there's no way he'll be better than Hafley. And right, you can think he wouldn't, right? But you can't say that he won't.
And if you want to look at it, like, his last defense in Philly was better than any defense Hafley had in Green Bay. That's just a fact. So
fair enough.
Will his defenses always be that good? We don't know. We have no idea if he's going to be better than Hafley. But I don't like it. It wasn't like my number one choice. It wasn't like top of the list. I would have loved to have seen other guys get the opportunity to at least interview. But I'm willing to give it a chance. And we'll see how it turns out. I can see some of the things that probably Matt was looking for in Gannon and what he can bring. But yeah, there's a lot of questions with it. It's not, and the other thing is too, like, why rush it? Like, I just feel like you had more time to interview other guys that maybe would have won you over, maybe would have been better fits. But maybe he was just so impressed by Gannon, and that's what he wanted to do. But I was surprised by the timing of it, and it seems like the lack of talking to outside candidates. Like, he apparently interviewed all the position coaches on staff, but then the external guys was 3 or 4 guys. If they even got, the Christian Parker interview, I don't know if that even happened. I don't think they got
a chance to interview him.
Right, because he was hired Thursday of last week.
He was
interviewing in Dallas on Wednesday, so I don't even think he got to Green Bay. I know they wanted to talk to him, but I don't think that even happened. So he really interviewed Al Harris and Durante Jones and Gannon externally. Now, maybe there were other conversations that we don't know about. Nobody knew about Hafley until he was hired. So maybe there's more of that we don't know about. But I thought he would cast a bigger net. I thought this would take a little more time, and he'd have more people that he would speak with. But he found this guy, and I guess, there's some reports that Gannon was maybe, there were other teams possibly interested in him, but I don't know if that's accurate or not. Might have just been a case of Matt.
That's the part that kind of bugs me, because I think that there's a lot that goes on, obviously, that we don't get visibility to. And then, you can kind of see based on what happens, the difference between something being real and something being not real. So like what I mean by that is, the Christian Parker thing, like the guy was in high demand. He didn't even get to Green Bay to interview. That's what being in high demand looks like. You're telling me, like, Gannon only had 2 interviews that we know of. It was the Cowboys and the Titans, and he didn't, nothing got done there immediately. There was the rumor, he'll go coach for one of the Harbaughs, but there were no reports of that interview, and that was not on a radar until he got hired with the Packers. So that's where I kind of like, I think some of that is put out there to maybe soften things. Like, oh yeah, he was sought after, don't worry about it. And it's like, but was he?
Maybe.
Because we know what that looks like, and that's not what this looks like. They don't look the same. So that's where I get a little weird about, like, I don't know. I think you guys are just kind of feeding me some nonsense to make me calm down, which is fine. I get it. You got to do your own damage control. But at the same time, it's analyzing what we have, right? And there's reasons on both sides of this thing to say we've seen this before and it doesn't look good, or we've seen this before and it worked out, So let's start with the negative, right? A guy has one good season, maybe 2 as a defensive coordinator, goes on to be a head coach, doesn't do well as a head coach, hasn't done well since. That guy's name is Eberflus. Then there's, on the other hand, there's, how about this one? Dom Capers, right? Great defensive coordinator, goes on to be a head coach, not a good head coach, but was back to be a great defensive coordinator. I think Wade Phillips also did the same thing.
Spagnuolo.
Yeah, lots of examples of these defensive coordinators not being good head coaches and then going back and being great defensive coordinators. I think part of that is the appreciation, and maybe, this is one thing that LaFleur is clear that he appreciated about Gannon is the head coaching experience. I think part of that is that these guys are like, look, I get it. Having to be a head coach, there's a whole lot more on your plate. I get to go back to just be DC. I'm cool with that. It's like swinging the weighted bat, I go back here and be in my own little corner. That's way better than being a head coach. You can have fun with that. I'm not messing with it. So I think there's that versus a guy who's trying to prove himself and maybe take on as much responsibility as he can to prove that he can be a head coach. Whereas, Gannon's probably not trying to prove that right now. So, I think there's a lot of ways to see it from both sides of, I originally I just didn't like it. My whole idea about the issues around the Packers right now is culture and personality related, and just what you can see from him doesn't look great, And like, if it'd be one thing, it's like, well, you got one bad example, but then check out this other clip. He's a pretty badass. And that could exist. I know there was the clip of him pulling up to somebody saying, we're going to, I can't even remember what he said. Something about,
we're going to gut him.
We're going to gut him. That's what it was. Yeah.
It was the NFC. We're going to gut him before the NFC Championship game. Yeah.
So that was real. Is that real?
Yeah. Well, that's real. Yeah.
And that's him.
Man took that video. That's him. Yeah. That's outside the stadium before the game.
I like that. I I want my defensive coordinator talking like that.
I can tell you his defenses with the Eagles, they were not soft. They were tough. They were tough defenses. And I know everybody's saying, well, he had the pass rushers, and he did, but like Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox were near the end of their careers. They weren't like in their prime, and they had really good years. And Josh Sweat had a really good year, and Hassan Reddick had like a career year, and he had been a guy that had bounced around until he found a role. And then comes the Eagles, and I say he put up like 15 sacks that year or something. Like, and then the secondary, like Darius Slay was still pretty good. He hadn't but he wasn't peaked Darius Slay, and then he had James Bradbury, who was pretty good too, and like his linebackers played well, and then the next year, like the whole defense fell apart, and a lot of it was the same personnel, and they were a physical front, and so like I'm skeptical, and I'm not in love with this hire even a little bit, but I think he deserves more credit than some people are giving him for what he's done as a coordinator.
I'm willing to accept that. I'm definitely willing. And let me be clear, I want to be wrong, right? Like, make me wrong. Be a great defensive coordinator and make me eat every last word, right? I would love nothing more than that. And I did say something to that effect on Twitter, and shout out to Swervin32 for coming in with some receipts for me. Because I said, look, convince me. Like, who is it? Who's endorsed the guy? Who's the one who are the guys that are coming out saying, JG's the man? Well, here we go. starting with, I believe this is Fletcher Cox, quote literally, JG, man, that's my guy. I think just in terms of his football IQ and how he views the game is so interesting to have conversations about how he sees certain things fitting. It's like that. That's something where I go, oh, all right, antennas up. I like that. I want to hear about a guy's football IQ. That is something you need in the room for sure. You can't just have some, meathead tough guy saying "rawr," and as much as I love that, you need that in the room. It can't be the only thing that's in the room. So yeah, that was one thing I really like. And he went on. There's a couple of paragraphs there where he spoke really highly of Jonathan Gannon, and then you got T.J. Edwards saying, I think he'd be awesome. I think in reference to being a head coach again, he's a great leader in terms of what he's up there talking. Exactly what he's talking about. He gets his message across very clear, and there's a reason behind everything that he's saying. It's not just words for nothing. He's the head coach of our defense. He's our leader in every Sunday, and he's been awesome to us this year. That's high praise from your linebacker captain there. Like that. Again, I look a lot into things that players say that they don't have to say, right? And what it looks like to me when a player's gonna not say something when he could say, yeah, I don't like the guy. There's like, it's a business. This is kind of how it goes. I wish him the best. They say stuff like that. When they come out and they can very specifically explain not only that he's the man, but here's why I believe he's the man and why he's helped me, as a football player, like that kind of depth, like that, that's sincere. And so, and those are great players too, right? It's not like those are just a couple of practice squad slappies. Like those are some great players that have that. So I'm here. I'm willing to listen. I hope it is the right hire. I really do. You've got Micah Parsons, man. Like you've got one of the best defensive weapons in the league. You better find somebody who knows how to use him. And what was it? 70 sacks that team had that year. I think it was 2022. Yeah. That Eagles team, 70 is a lot. Man, that's a big number.
And they didn't have a Micah Parsons level player. I mean, they had some good players for sure, but not a Micah Parsons level player. And
yeah, so that's where I'm looking at this going, look, all right, you're not totally unproven. I don't have the same bone to pick with him that I have with Stinovich, and he's called defensive plays. He's been a defensive coordinator. He's learned under other defensive coordinators, not just one guy. In fact, the guys that he's learned under are pretty great. Even Eberflus, when he was under him, that's when he had his good season, right, as a defensive coordinator in Indianapolis. So I've praised Jordan Love for his situation and being able to learn from Aaron Rodgers while he was being great. Jonathan Gannon's been able to work under some guys while they were being great, and then he did have a great year. I think his first year as defensive coordinator was not bad, right, but it wasn't great. And you're almost, you give them some grace in their first year. Nobody's first year is going to be guns a-blazing, but what he did in that second year, it's hard to argue with. You just wonder, like, is that a flash in the pan? Like, is that something that he can duplicate or not? And that's the biggest question. What we've got to do as fans is sit back and go, well, Matt LaFleur and effectively Ed Policy are betting on this guy that he can, right? Like that he can be great, that he is the right guy to get the most out of these players that they have. So, it's not anybody making the decision in a vacuum. Certainly, I think, we talked about this last week. I think Matt LaFleur definitely had final say, but I think the input he got probably aligned with what he ultimately chose, right? I don't know that there was probably a lot of dispute in the room. I don't get the idea that that's how these guys work. I feel like they probably come to a consensus around whatever it is that's chosen. It's how they at least carry themselves. So that's good. They're doing that as professionals. But yeah, so they believe this is the right move, and they're pretty smart guys. They did find Jeff Hafley, and nobody else really understood that he was on the radar. He got the most out of those guys. We got to believe he can do it again. I guess my fear in this is he is kind of a Joe Barry repeat, and I know he's got the one famous quote that he doesn't have a scheme, but I think I saw somewhere his tendencies are, he's heavy on cover 4, off DBs. That's the kind of thing. It's like, look, if y'all are not happy about, DBs playing off in short yardage situations, I got bad news. Like, that's what that is. That's what cover 4 is. And so hopefully whatever they did in that 2022 season with the Eagles to get those 70 sacks, hopefully that's what you're doing. And whatever coverage you're running behind, that's probably going to work. If you're getting to the quarterback like that, and then Micah Parsons being who he is, I think things can go well there. And I want to also stress, like, I know there's some concerns about the resources you have to add to this team. This draft is an interesting draft. It's not very top heavy, but the back end looks all right. We'll get into it, but they're going to be able to add some pieces that he's going to be able to use. You're going to get that second year jump out of the guys like Sorrell and Oliver. There's going to be some things to be optimistic about with the pieces that you already have. And you don't need to go off and add 5 impact players to the defense for this defense to be where they are. You need to find at least one bona fide corner. They'll probably find more than one. If they do what they did with the safeties, they'll find more than one. But then you need at least one bona fide defensive lineman. And then you need to let the other guys progress. But I don't think that you need to have any kind of monumental additions to this defense. In fact, you're going to have addition by subtraction, I think, when Gary's gone. That's just a suspicion of my own. I don't, have anything to back that up. But
Gary will be gone for sure. I don't doubt that for a second. But regardless of who they hired as defensive coordinator, they needed to add pieces to the defense. So I think personnel-wise, they need to add corners. They need to add defensive tackles. Another pass rusher wouldn't hurt. But that's what the offseason's for, right? Like, they're going to add pieces. Like, let's all settle down. Like, yes, they need to do things, but they will. Like, we're not at that point yet where they can, but they will. And every other team in the league needs to add players at multiple positions. It's not just the Packers.
Right.
So they'll be okay. Like, let's see what they can do. Let's see how Gannon and the new coaches that are going to come on staff can develop them. And that was the other thing that came out tonight, is that they're losing Ryan Downard, who's the defensive backs coach, along with Eric Ainsley. I'm guessing Ainsley's staying, but Downard's going with Halfley. Okay.
I saw Downard. I didn't see that Ainsley's leaving. Hopefully.
No. I'm saying, there's been no news on Ainsley. I'm hoping he stays, but Downard is leaving. And also the linebackers coach from last season, Sean Duggan. Halfley. But he was a Halfley guy, came with him from Boston College.
Yep.
And, 2024 linebackers played pretty good. They got a lot out of a rookie second-round pick in Edrin Cooper, and that was with Anthony Campanelli. Campanelli leaves, Duggan gets promoted. Cooper wasn't as good. Quay Walker
they were all right.
Wasn't
they
as
weren't
good.
Terrible. You wanted more from them.
Yeah, so change at linebackers coach, that's fine with me. So they're going to have at least a couple spots to fill in the defensive staff, so maybe they can get some good teachers and get more out of the guys that they already have here, plus the new additions that they're going to be bringing in from free agency and the draft.
Yeah, so I don't think that we necessarily need to sit here and panic, maybe like it was easy and fun to do when the news first broke. It's always easy to be impulsive and panic, find the worst examples of the person and just completely blow it all out of proportion. But yeah, the more I dig, the more I'm like, okay, there's reason to believe in this. There's reasons to think that this can be the right thing to do. And DBs are probably the area you need the most help as far as development goes right now. And that's what he does. Right. So
DB coach.
And so that's good. I'll take that, and again, it's kind of funny that when they see a position that they need to address, they address it, man. They throw the resources at it. And I think this is part of that solution. You've got a very good safety room. You want to get the most out of that, but also you need to bring up some cornerbacks real quick, because I don't know that the solution is in the room, and I don't know that they believe that the solution is in the room. They may believe that the depth is in the room, but I think that they need to add, at least one guy. You need to at least have one new starter out there, and then maybe leave that other position for the 3 guys there that have competed for starting spot. But yeah, there's got to be a difference in that room, and it can't be just personnel. I think the way that they play, the way that they actually approach their game right now needs more discipline to it and a little bit more structure to it. And I don't think that we've had bad coaching in that area, right? Like we all love Halfley. We're just talking about downward going and not wanting to lose Ainsley. So it's not that the coaching is bad there, but I think that there's something different that needs to be done. And it's not that you can get that out of the personnel there, but it's also not that the personnel is the only problem. Like I think it's a twofold thing. You need more, new personnel in the room, but you also probably benefit from having a new coaching voice in the room that has been experienced in developing DBs. So you're getting a little bit of already attention on that room. I think that's a good sign. If we're gonna like go off and really scratch for all the optimism we can. The other thing is, I think there's talent here in the draft, like for cornerbacks that wasn't there last season or last draft season. I think there's going to be opportunities at defensive tackle that weren't there last offseason. And that sounds strange because the defensive tackle position last year in the draft was pretty deep. But I think this one's pretty sneaky deep, and I don't think we've gotten into that yet. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities for this unit to improve. And I think what we need to look at is, again, we're not very far away from this defense just being stacked top to bottom. And a lot of teams are way, way further off than that, right? I mean, y'all go take a look at the Bears contract situation this offseason, then come back and talk to me. Like, they got some stuff to figure out. And there's a lot of teams that do. There's a lot of teams that are going to be losing guys. A lot of teams that got to figure out their salary cap situation, maybe don't have draft picks that they want. The Packers are in a very manageable situation, in my opinion. And you got the right guys in the driver's seat to do it. Russ Ball is a salary cap ninja. They're gonna get it all figured out, and they're gonna be better next season than they were this season as far as the roster goes. I fully believe that. We just got to be optimistic when it comes to stuff like this. I think that's the important thing, is to find reasons for optimism, and then hopefully as we go through the offseason, we get little chirps out of players about JG being the guy.
Yeah, we'll learn more about him and hear more about him. But just everybody who loved Halfley, nobody knew anything about him when they hired him, right? Like, we didn't know what to expect. That was a hire that came out of left field. Nobody knew. They talked to him, nothing. And then we all bought in because he got results and he improved the defense. So just give it a chance. You don't know what Gannon's going to do, and he does have a track record of being a good defensive coordinator. And I see people saying it's the same thing over. No, Mike Pettine's scheme was different than Joe Barry's scheme. And Joe Barry's scheme or Jeff Halfley's scheme was different than Joe Barry's before him. And Gannon's is probably going to have more familiarity with Halfley, but with his own twists on it and whatever they're going to add to it. Historically he's played a lot of cover four, but maybe we see less of that, because Halfley, especially his first year, he had kind of changed his scheme around, to fit his personnel. Halfley, going back to college, was a big cover one guy. We rarely saw that in Green Bay. So he changed it based on what he had, based on the league, based on the way teams play him. So you want a coach who's adaptable. And that's one thing Gannon's defenses were in Arizona, is they changed week to week. They were kind of unpredictable. So they were a little more playing the same way in Philly, but he had the horses where he didn't have to disguise a whole lot. And I think he was playing what the head coach wanted him to play, in a sense. Whereas I think in Arizona, it was, hey, we don't have the personnel. Let's figure it out. We're going to be different each week, right? So teams can't always figure out what we're doing. So that's not a bad way to do it. And if you have better personnel, and they will with the Packers, than what you had in Arizona, it might be pretty good. So give it a chance. Yeah, I'm not saying this is a home run hire or anything like that. I'm not saying that he's going to be a great defensive coordinator. I'm very skeptical, but I can see that it has a chance to work. And certainly when you have Micah Parsons coming back, that can make your defense really good no matter what you're running, no matter who the coordinator is.
Yeah, and I think that's the other thing. But that's also maybe what a fan would sit there and go, yeah, we've got some great tools. Let's not get somebody who's just average at his job instead of getting somebody who's really good. And that's just a perspective. That's not saying that that's the correct perspective. We can't even say that this guy's average at his job. He was a great defensive coordinator when he had a chance to be. He did not do well as a head coach. There can be a whole book of reasons for that have nothing to do with defense. Now, the one issue, and this is just remarkable, and it might just be a great coincidence, but the fact that and I believe I'm hopefully football nerds correct me if I get the terminology wrong, his defense was first in DVOA in quarters 1 through 3 with Arizona. And then in quarter number 4, dropped all the way down to 27th. And it's just like, oh, man, come on now. Like that's the kind of stuff that I just, when you have an issue and then you find somebody who's got the same issue, maybe avoid that because they've got the same problem you do. And maybe the solution. But again, that's a very, very small thing. And a whole host of reasons could be for, again, whatever. It could be unrelated to his abilities to be a defensive coordinator.
And I saw some stats too that like last season with the Cardinals, the first 9 or 10 weeks, his defense was pretty solid. Not, best in the league or anything like that. But they were a solid defense, doing a good job. And then some injuries hit him, and like the rest of the years dropped off, and that sank the numbers down. Okay, that makes sense if you're losing so many guys. I mean, like we just saw that with Green Bay. Everybody was loving Halfley. You look at their defense. You lose Micah Parsons, Devontae Wyatt. They weren't very good down the stretch. So, yeah, and to your point, like he wasn't a good head coach, but we went through the list earlier: Spagnuolo, Capers, Vic Fangio. Those guys weren't good head coaches. They were really good defensive coordinators. So I'm not as concerned about like he wasn't a good head coach. I don't think he had a whole lot to work with, but I want him to be a good defensive coordinator. I don't the head coaching record, that doesn't bother me that much.
Yeah. Well, and our friend R. Showers has a point here that I'm not aware of but willing to believe. Being fair, the GM in Arizona is horrible. I have no problem believing that, right? Like, but not following any Arizona stuff. I wouldn't know that. That would be a reason that a head coach would not be good, right?
They're a
like
bad organization. They're a dysfunctional organization.
Yeah, having a bad boss can make you bad at your job for sure. So yeah, I mean, we may just need to get this awful 2025 season behind us and accept that it was just an anomaly with all the fourth quarter collapses. I won't pretend to know what the solution is. I just hope that they do, right? So whatever it is, I trust, right? So we don't have a choice. I hope the Packers are going to be good, right? So I want this move to work out. I hope that they prove me wrong and not thinking that it could be the solution, but there's just a lot to analyze here,
And that would be for any hire. Like if they would have hired Al Harris or Durante Jones or Jim Leonard, like we don't know how any of those.
There's a lot of unknowns.
They've never been coordinators in the NFL, right?
Yep.
Like Wisconsin's a lot different than the NFL, and I know that people were all excited about Al Harris. If that was Al Harris who had never played for the Packers, nobody would have been excited for the interview.
Right? Yeah, because he's got he's a decent record as a DB coach, but
a lot of interceptions, but they give up a lot of yards and points.
Yeah, and so it's not all just on the surface. Is that the guy you want leading that group of men? Is he the professional you want setting the example? And I'm not accusing Al Harris of being anything but a top-notch professional. It's just that's part of the question these guys have to answer that a fan can't answer. You're not in that room. You're not having that conversation. So yeah, I'm not down on this hire as much because of who I wish they would have gotten. I think, me being a biased also Badger fan, I would love to have seen Jim Leonard get a shot. But I also, I'm aware, like, hey, they interviewed him before. So it's not like they didn't know what they were passing on. They had an idea. It's very easy to accept that maybe an agent slipped that whole mutual interest thing out there to get the Packers to wait. That may not have been the Packers putting that out there. So that's where I look at this. It's not like, oh man, Jim Leonard would have definitely been better. You just can't say that. You can't say that. Nobody can say that. If you trust the organization that their decision-making process is sound, and in other areas it has proven to be, then you got to let it play out, and Al Harris would be fun. Jim Leonard would be fun. I think the most fun part about that, if it would have happened, is that the Packers went through their decision-making process and decided one of those guys was the guy, right? Then you get that confirmation like, oh man, he is. All right, maybe he's the guy. Let's do this. Let's rock and roll. Personally, for me, the attraction to Jim Leonard is a cultural thing. I mean, what he did with the Badgers defense while he was there was awesome. It was very remarkable. And it's not that the Badgers historically had a soft defense, right? Like they're pretty well known for having a solid defense, but he kicked it into another level and they accomplished some great things, beat some great teams. Like there was a lot of stuff that they were able to do that you probably wouldn't have expected the Badgers to be able to do. And certainly they haven't really done that since. That's all right. Let's keep going. That's where it's just, you got to trust the process. I hate saying that. I really do, because I've been in DFW for the Jason Garrett years of trust the process with the Clapper, and I get it. There's some PTSD involved with for fans with that, but yeah, I trust the process in this case. If that's the guy they landed on, certainly they had access to all of the social media clips. It's not like they didn't interview the guy and didn't get to know his personality. They certainly did, right? And I don't know how many interviews that is. They were pretty tight-lipped about some of that, and how many phone conversations that is, and how many drinks at the Kohler Lodge is that, all that kind of stuff. I don't know, but they didn't just hire the guy off of Tinder. Like it's not like they swiped right and this is the guy. So you got to trust the process. And again, historically, they've had pretty sound decision-making processes. I hear the boo birds going, yeah, well, Goot missed on JSN. I get it. We missed on JSN, man. We're so fixated on that we forget that we missed on Christian Gonzalez too. That one to me is the bigger atrocity in the picture. But anyway,
yes.
Yeah, so it's not perfect. You're not going to have 100% right decisions. I think Joe Barry still got a job, and we realize that was not the right decision now. But this group should also be learning from their mistakes. In some cases, I think they've demonstrated they've done that. In others, not so much. But we're working through those things. I'm starting to see this whole special teams situation across the Shanahan tree and going, hey man, this is deep. We gotta do some kind of voodoo breaking or something. I don't know what's going on, but the neglect of the special teams has got to change. We might need a whole episode about that. But all that to say, I don't know if Rich Bisaccia is losing his job. It doesn't sound like he is.
Sure doesn't seem like it. It doesn't seem like he's retiring, but
that's a whole different thing. And that's where I'm almost like, I'm looking at this going, he's not losing it. Oh man. So then hang on. Like now my whole thought process gets all jarred, because special teams is obviously an issue. And if that's the guy who's in charge of it, isn't he responsible for it being a problem? But you guys are resoundingly telling me no. And even people around the league are like, no, he's the man. Make it make sense, Tim.
It's an organizational problem, and it has been long before Rich Bisaccia was there. They don't care enough about certain aspects of special teams.
The data is just stacking up, though, man. Like when you keep losing critical games because of a specific unit, it's like we got to fix that unit, man.
You would think. I mean, they have at least tried to add some special team only players over the years that they've given them that. Okay, it's still broke. They got a good punter now finally. They used to have a good kicker, but since Mason Crosby left, we've been running through kickers. We
thought we had something with McMahon, and now that's just
and they just will not invest in return guys. Like, I think part of Jaden Reed getting drafted, and even going back for part of Amari Rodgers getting drafted, was for return ability. But then they got here, and Amari Rodgers stunk at it. Jaden Reed was like, yeah, he catches the ball, but he doesn't really do anything with him in his returns. And then this year it was like, well, let's try, Savion Williams on kickoffs and Matthew Golden on punts. No, they've never done it before, but let's try it. And then when Matthew Golden didn't work out, it was, let's put Romeo Dobbs back there. Right. And And Savion Williams, well, he's playing with an injured foot and he's in and out of the lineup. So Bo Melton's going to do it. Emmanuel Wilson's going to do it. And I'm probably missing somebody else. And then finally for the playoff game, all right, we'll let Keyshawn Nixon go back there and do it. and apparently Josh Jacobs had been asking to do it and they wouldn't let him, which I kind of get that. But then in the playoff game, they do let him. But still, like, if it's the fourth quarter of a game and you're losing, like, put him back there for a return. Or put Keyshawn Nixon back. Like, we went through this all year. So, like, they don't give him a return, guys. Yeah, it's just broken. And organizationally, it's been broken for a long time. So, Bisaccia is part of the blame. And, yes, I think they should move on from him. But you can switch out special teams coaches. I don't think a whole lot's going to change until they get more serious about special teams as an organization, starting with the GM.
Yeah, I guess you just have to wonder if they believe it's an issue. You know, how many times do you have to lose these critical games because of special teams mistakes before you go, hey, maybe we just make a slight tweak to our organizational approach here. So I don't know. Hopefully that's something that's being addressed this offseason. The data is just overwhelming at this point. You know, if it's not special teams to blame for those critical playoff losses, it's injuries, right? Like your injuries to your O-line specifically, which, you know, it's not injuries just in general where we're making excuses, but you can definitely point to critical injuries on the O-line if for reasons that playoff games didn't go the way you'd hoped. So you get kind of overwhelmed with like how big the NFL game is, right? Like when rookies are going into the league, the whole perception is, the playoff or the playbook is huge, and you know you got to study, and all this stuff, and it's like, dang, so. And then you got all the training happening and all the technology that goes into the training and the nutrition plans, and you just like, it's never off season, it's always football season, the training year round. And all this, you know, what Tom Brady spent $1 million a year on his body or whatever it is, like all this stuff, man, right? Like, so you expect that they're probably sitting down at some point going, hey, man, you know, like, why'd we lose? And like, and analyzing the data about, like, you know, that special teams unit, I tell you, they keep popping up on these things. I don't know. We don't care about that unit. Keep going. Like that, I can't believe that that's what's happening. You know what I mean? I can't believe that it comes down to, it's like, yeah, well, philosophically, we don't give a shit. So let's just not acknowledge that problem. What's the other problem? How do we throw some spaghetti on the wall here and make something stick? You know, like,
yeah.
I hope that's not what's happening.
No, I don't think they're like blowing it off like that. But I think when it comes time to like invest in that position, they're choosing not to. Like it, and getting a return guy is not that expensive, right? Like, you have one on your roster that could return kickoffs, but they choose not to, I guess, because he's a starting cornerback. But it's not like you're asking to pay somebody $20 million a year to return punts and kickoffs for you. It's not that costly, but they choose to not do that, or they choose to not find a roster spot because they want to keep, you know, a 10th offensive lineman who down the road maybe they can, 3 years maybe he develops into something, or a fifth or sixth defensive tackle like Nazir Stackhouse, who maybe next year we can develop him into be, a run stop. Like, okay, down the line you might be, but like right now you need a kick returner, and it's killing your team field position wise or decision making wise, or you're they didn't have a lot of turnovers on it, but you see one yesterday in the NFC Championship game. We've seen them before on returns. Like, I think they probably know that there's issues there, and I think they have tried to fix some things, but then there's other ways they go about it, and they just don't want to invest in those positions. And that's why they went through some younger kickers instead of going out and maybe getting somebody that was experienced and proven. And then they realized, they went through Carlson, and then they went through Narvison, and then they finally said, we got to get a kicker. And, here's McManus. And now we're going to invest in McManus. And that was the right move at the time. And then he fell apart this season because they're kicking him with an injury. But, yeah, it's just I think they want to go cheap at that special teams position. So it's like, okay, or ignore certain ones altogether. And that's why it comes back and bites them in the ass every year.
Well, I got to believe that those guys are in there narrowing down the problem and throwing solutions at it. Got to believe it. Got to believe it. And, so if Richie B is still, the man that everybody says he is, then yeah, sure, keep him in the room and fix the damn problem or enable him to do it, right? Maybe his hands are behind his back. Unhandcuff the man. Let him do what he's doing or do what he does. I don't know. It's very strange to me that something would be such an issue so consistently and you just wouldn't take a stab at fixing it. But and look, our friend Chris here, 96 Super Bowl was won by our special teams unit. You're right. It's in the building. Like, how can they ignore that?
Well, Desmond Howard was really cheap that year because he was a bust with Washington, but he was a cheap special teams only player. Like, he didn't play on offense at receiver. He was just on the team to return kicks. And look how important he was. And, the incredible impact he had on that team.
Well, I do have some good news. I do think that there could be some special teams reinforcements in this draft class. And I did get to interview one of them. Kicker Trace Mack from Florida. His long is 56 yards. And I believe he only has missed one from beyond 50 in his career. And forgive me, Trey, if you haven't even missed one. I could be wrong, but anyway, his percentage beyond 50 is impressive. And I was able to ask him, what is your method for handling that pressure? What is your method for not being, emotionally swayed by adversity in a game and, maybe missing a kick or something like that. And I was impressed by his answers. It's a neat interview, so we'll be getting that one up. He's one that there's a couple kickers in this class, and I don't know how teams are going to value these guys, but I would not be surprised if they get drafted because they have the pedigree of what you're looking for, the consistency of making field goals, but also being, a high percentage beyond 50 yards, I think is kind of the expectation in the NFL these days. And there's a few guys coming out that have that. So, something to keep an eye on. The other one that might be able to help our return game, depending on where he lands as far as, draft boards go, is Xavion Thomas from LSU. He has been consistently one of the fastest guys on the field at the Shrine Bowl this week. The Shrine Bowl's Twitter account's been posting those, like the 3 fastest guys from each practice, and he's been on that list, I think, every day. But he was one of the first players I saw at the first practice that stood out because his acceleration was noticeably different than everybody else on the field. The guy just got up to top speed much quicker, and it's kind of remarkable. It's just kind of weird when you see other guys running as fast as they can, and he's just separating from them. Fast dude. Very interested to see what he runs his 40 in. Good, looks like a good returner. I took some returns this week in that practice. So that's one that again, I haven't studied these draft boards. I don't really have a feel for who's going to fall where. I believe he's a receiver outside of being a returner, and he's, I don't think he's a bad receiver, but the receiver class can be tough to judge. You got to get into the film before you can really figure that out. But he's one to keep an eye on because if you can get him, I definitely think that he's one of those guys that can help you day one as a returner and be a difference maker because his acceleration is nuts. It's off the charts. It's really wild to see. So yeah, that's one that I would really keep an eye on. There's a lot of guys. So I was able to get some interviews before the weather stepped in and interfered. So we'll be getting those interviews posted up to the Pack Weekly Pod Twitter and probably the Packers Talk Network YouTube channel. So y'all keep an eye out for that. Help you get to know some of these guys that are at the Shrine Bowl and in this draft class. But yeah, it's overall, I think it's been an interesting week. I think there's a lot of guys that are standing out and maybe proving some things out there. The Florida State defensive lineman is one that I think a lot of people have been buzzing about. I did get to ask him if he met with the Packers, and he did, and he actually had a pretty enthusiastic yes to that. It sounded like he enjoyed his meeting with them. Now, not at that point in time, they had not had their defensive coordinator hired. So there's no telling what they can actually, how deep they can go in those interviews when you don't even have your defensive coordinator in place. But when you're just getting to know the guy and deciding if you like him or not, it sounds like that was a pretty good meeting. So that's exciting because he is a massive human, and he's had a strong week there at the Shrine Bowl. That's Darrell Jackson, defensive tackle from Florida State. There's been a few others. I could go down the list and probably take a little bit longer than we need to. One offensive lineman that I thought was very interesting this week, and not even saying that he had the best week, but I think what he did was just impressive. It's Brian Parker out of Duke, spent his most of his career at tackle, played some left tackle earlier, shifted to right tackle after that. Or do I have that backwards, Tim? Was it right tackle early and then left tackle? It was one of the two.
Tackle, and now he's at
early in his career. He was on one side, and then this last year he played the other and played pretty well.
Hard. But I saw a lot of people raving about him in practice this week.
Well, he was playing center at least to the first. He might have gotten some snaps out there at guard as well, but he's playing center that first practice at the Shrine Bowl that I was able to get to. And that was a tough assignment, man, to go from playing tackle your career and then slide on into center. And then, some of the guys that he was going against, there were some pretty talented interior defensive linemen at the Shrine Bowl this week. And he stepped right in there and took it, man. He took on the assignment. He looks like a Packer guy, right? He looks like one of those guys that they probably would value his versatility. There's not a whole lot of dummies going to Duke. He's probably a pretty smart guy. I did catch part of his interview. He sounded like a pretty sharp man. So, yeah, that's one I would keep an eye on. He's an interesting one. Had a good week, and the game tomorrow. I think it'll be interesting to see who stands out. But then there's several DBs too. The guys out of Toledo, they look the part. They fit the mold for what the Packers look for. They had some strong. Both had a strong week here at the Shrine Bowl. So there's some very good talent here that could be very relevant to the Packers. Come draft season, and even undrafted free agents, some of these guys end up getting signed. That was what Nazir Stackhouse was. I did get to interview him last year at the Shrine Bowl. So yeah, that's it's kind of fun, see potential future guys here. But overall, I'm optimistic about this class. I think it's kind of a good year to not have your first round pick, honestly. I don't know that what you're getting in that 20 range is going to be a whole lot different than what you're going to get in the second or third round. So. We'll get further into it. I think some guys might stand out after the combine. That always happens. But yeah, so I think there's reason to be optimistic, guys. I overreacted to the JG signing. I didn't like it. I had a negative knee-jerk reaction. But overall, I think there's reasons to be optimistic. I don't know, Tim. You got any final thoughts?
No, I mean So as far as Shrine Bowl, it's awesome that you were able to get there and get to see it. Unfortunately, I know the weather kept you from getting back as much as you would like to, but really cool access that you get, and interested to see who stands out in the game on Tuesday night. And then Senior Bowl this week too, and that's always a big one. And the Packers love to draft Senior Bowl guys, so keep an eye on Senior Bowl standouts. We'll talk about that next week, but that's a big event. And I'm with you about Jonathan Gannon. Initial reaction was not positive. I did not like it, but the more research I did, and just reading people who were more informed, who maybe were saw what he did in Philly closely, saw what he did in Arizona closely, kind of know him more. People that know defensive scheme, a lot of people are saying it's a good fit and a good hire. So okay, I'll believe that, or I'll hope for that. That's what we want, is the best. I'm skeptical, but we don't know. We don't know until they actually line up to play football and we see what he does. So hope for the best. And hopefully we come back during next season. We're sitting there man, we were wrong. He's a great hire. Love the guy. Let's hope that's our reaction, but we don't know.
I will eat every word, no doubt about it.
I'd be more than happy to be wrong about it.
Me too. I'm scanning through some of our questions in here. I know so we've got a couple guys paying attention. So our shower says, I don't follow the Badgers closely, but that white outside linebacker looked good in those practices. That is Mason Rager. and he definitely has looked good this week. He's a big dude. He's like 6'5", 250, might be a little heavier than that. He's a big guy, and he definitely had a good week. He's one to keep an eye on, I think. I think there's going to be some good opportunities for the Packers to add to the edge group and the pass rushers. Especially we're all kind of assuming that you get rid of Rashawn Gary this offseason. I think if you do that, there's going to be some opportunities to add some high-value guys, not necessarily at the top of the draft, but, guys, there's going to be several that are available. There's been some good ones here this week at the Shrine Bowl. There's going to be a few at the Senior Bowl as well. You always see some guys at the Combine stand out. You're going to have a chance, I think, to add a really like a quality pass rusher in this one. But yeah, and then our guy Daryl here says Caleb Downs considered one of the best DB prospects. Man, I'll tell you what, Dane Brugler's got him as his top overall prospect. That's like I saw that and I was like, whoa, sheesh, man, number one ahead of Mendoza.
He's really good, and he won't be a Packer, but he's a really good player. He was good as a freshman right away at Bama, and then he transferred to Ohio State. Yeah, he's a stud.
He absolute stud. I don't know if Brugler will keep him at number one, but I thought that was interesting that he came out the gate with Downs at the top of his board. So yeah, dude is a stud. Will not be a Packer. He'll be long gone. We won't be those guys that say everybody won't be there when the Packers are on the clock, because that one's not going to be the right Packer.
No, he won't be there in the second round. That's for sure. With the Packers.
Yeah. So. So you guys tune in tomorrow night. Like I said, the Shrine Bowl will be on the NFL Network, and I am going to hopefully be there. It looks like the roads might be able to clear up by that time, and I'll be able to get a little sideline coverage, hopefully interview a few of the guys after the game, see how they do. But a lot of good talent to watch here this year at the Shrine Bowl. Got to give hats off to everybody who's responsible for that, because they've really put together a good group this year and a good event despite the weather. Actually, the hats off to them for their planning, because the way they set it up, the team, coaches, everybody at the hotel that where they're at, you could walk to the Star where all the practices in the game are going to be. So they were totally ready for this. Good on them. I live an hour away though, and not interested in driving an hour on solid ice. Just not a good move for the health. But here we are. It's all right. All these things happen, and the show will go on. But we're gonna have some fun throughout the off season, getting to know this draft class, guys. We'll go like we have the last couple of off seasons. We'll go and do a positional breakdown. We'll have each episode dedicated to one or two positions and our top prospects, not necessarily ranking the prospects overall, but the top fit that we think the Packers might be targeting, guys that look like Packer guys, and certainly guys that could be available when the Packers are on the clock. So we're going to be going through that. Come on in and hang out. Of course, this kind of conversation is interesting to more than just Packer fans. So, just invite your football fans. Let's come hang out with us. They can get to know the Pack Weekly Pod, and then when the season kicks off, they can come and troll Packers fans if they need to. But yeah, we're going to have some fun this offseason. We're going to be here still every Monday night, 9:30, streaming live and having a good time. But we're building the 2026 Super Bowl champs right now. It starts now, and you guys are going to do it with us. So y'all have a good evening. If y'all are out there in the way of these winter storms, stay warm. Don't go driving on ice if you don't need to, absolutely have to. Make the wise choice. Stay home. Hang by the fire, by the heater, crack a beer, whatever it's got to be. I've got my evening coffee here that y'all probably think I'm crazy for, but got to stay up for these late podcasts. It's got a lot going on. I can't be falling asleep on you guys while we're talking Pack. But come on back next week, like Tim said. We'll have a Senior Bowl recap. We'll maybe talk a little bit of free agents. We're talking all the team building now, and we got to round out some coaching positions. We still may have a little bit of turbulence coming, maybe some welcome turbulence. There might be an exit that we're all okay with, and wish them the best on the way out, right?
That's true. Yeah, there's definitely changes coming to that coaching staff. We're seeing it starting to pop up. We'll probably see a little more this week, so we'll be talking about it next week.
Lots to talk about next week, Packer fans. Keep your heads up. JG's going to be the man. We're going to speak it into existence, and this defense is going to be elite next season. 70 sacks. He set the bar high for himself. Nothing less than 70 will be acceptable. So we'll just set our eyes on that. We know Micah's got his eyes set on that sack title, that sack record. Good times ahead. That's why the sunglasses are on, guys. It's bright out here. We got to keep the shades on. But y'all come back, hang out with us next week, talk some more Pack, bring a friend, and of course, as always, go Pack.